Test. Oh yeah, looks like we're good. Okay. I'm Phil Wyman, and this is the Wild Theology podcast, where the world, the humans in it, and God are all wilder than we've been told.
That's your intro.
So, you'll get philosophy and theology and crazy stories that come from 30 years of pastoring,
Boring.
20 years of festival work,
Whatever.
and the mud and blood of wrestling with the living in the spaces angels fear to tread.
Ooh, trying to sound interesting, are we? Yeah, you think you got something to say?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the problem, dimwit.
Look, I'm a lot smarter than you think.
Yeah, you tightened your shoes this morning.
Whatever. We're Phil Wyman, and this is Wild Theology, where you get to argue with your own ideas.
And lose.
That's the point. This is a short series called the Obscene Hermenuet. Hermeneut is a person who practices hermeneutics, which has been described as the theory and methodology for understanding things. Traditionally, hermeneutics was attached to literature, especially the Bible, but it has been expanded to include the way we see things and understand the world around us. In this short series, I want to challenge how we think about the things we think about. This is the Obscene Hermenuet, Part 3, and we ask whether the way we interpret the world might be like a Rorschach test. In the last podcast, we looked at social media developments and the manner in which they were driving us to radicalization. Warnings from techno-sociologist Zeynep Tufekci and anecdotes from Facebook provided evidence that, as a culture, we are being divided into oppositional categories in politics and religion and a host of other social categories. Consequently, depending on who we are, we don't trust our conservative or liberal neighbor or our Muslim or Christian or atheist work associate. In this third part of the Obscene Hermeneut, we consider what our interpretation of the world around us says about us, and we ask the question, could it be that everything we interpret is like a Rorschach test? Perhaps the way we see the world has more to say about us than it does about the world we are critiquing. Let's begin with a story about assumptions. I moved to Salem, Massachusetts in 1999. Salem is a small New England city with thousands of people who self-identify as witches. It has over a dozen witchcraft shops, and a Halloween that lasts for an entire month. As a new pastor had just moved into town to start a new church, I thought it would be appropriate to meet the owners of these witchcraft shops and let them know that I wanted to build friendly relationships with them. On the whole, I was treated with respect, if not a bit of skepticism, but occasionally someone had to argue with me or show their distaste for Christianity. After visiting one of the witchcraft shops and introducing myself to the owner, I met a young man who simply had to talk to me about the problems with Christianity. He went on a tirade. He told me the Christian church was greedy and had a long history of hoarding gold. He talked about the lust for power and the consequent historic oppression. As he spoke, I simply nodded my head and listened. Occasionally I responded with simple words of agreement. After talking for a couple minutes, he calmed down, stopped ranting, and stared at me in confusion. I said to him, I agree with you completely. The Christian church has done all of those things, and sometimes still does. Yet, we know that Jesus wasn't like that, so we're just trying to do things differently, to perhaps look a little bit more like Jesus. He wasn't expecting that response, and we spent the next 30 minutes building a friendship and talking about how it's possible for Christianity to do things another way. Now, this young man had read about the greed and lust for power in the Christian church, and based upon that information, he believed that this was inherent to the system and was a motivating factor in all Christianity. He saw wars and greed, but he did not see helping the poor, or positive social revolution, things which can also be found in the history of the Church. If he had met a defensive Christian who simply wanted to defend the Church against so-called false allegations, the story would have ended differently. In some respect, every one of us is this young man. We have assumptions about something or someone based upon one-sided evidence we have read or heard. This one-sided evidence has probably been supportive of already well-formed prejudices. His ability to quickly frame an argument against Christianity was based upon his quick recall of information supporting his personal hypothesis about the greed and violence of the Christian Church. This quick recall is part of what is popularly called confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is the tendency to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms one's pre-existing beliefs or hypotheses. Let's consider how we are isolated from opposing opinions and how that affects us as interpreters of the world around us. A recent study published in PNAS, which stands for Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, claimed that, quote, the researchers saw that active Facebook users were more likely to interact with a limited number of news sources. Additionally, the more active a community was, the more self-segregated and polarized it was, unquote. So from this example found in social networking, we find that we surround ourselves with ideas we agree with and segregate ourselves from opposing positions. So, perhaps I believe that Republicans only listen to fake news. I believe that you can only remain Republican if you have a confirmation bias that allows you to defend the fake news you think is real. You would not support Republican policies or Republican candidates if you knew better. No, this goes both ways. Some Republicans believe the same thing about all Democrats, and evangelical Christians believe in intelligent design and therefore are biased against science. Therefore, if you are an evangelical Christian, you must not trust the findings of science. The Muslim world is full of extremist violence. Therefore, if you are Muslim, you place me in danger in the proximity to extremist violence. These are the kind of thoughts that we hold when we hold these biases that seem to be confirmed by the isolated communities we find ourselves in. Many people separate themselves from people they disagree with because to do otherwise would upset them too much. Isn't it possible that such intentional isolation is the behavior of someone already deep in the grips of confirmation bias? Yet strangely, it is not uncommon for a person entrenched in a community of self-confirming information to call foul on those they disagree with and declare that they are the ones operating within this feedback loop of confirmation bias. Now, I would submit that the quicker someone is to call confirmation bias on others, the more likely they are to suffer from it severely themselves. In a 2017 survey from Pew Research, people identified division between political groups as the most severe division in our culture, far exceeding anything else: race, class, age, locality. In just 5 years, this opinion has risen 7%. But for those who think that the political division is strong, and a very strong division, it has risen 16%. We're probably seeing others in this survey. We believe others are divisive, but we probably don't see ourselves as part of the problem. That is our own bias. Even if I am further radicalized in my opinion, I point to the other person and accuse them of moving further away, when in fact, maybe both of us are moving. Or maybe it was just me. I want to suggest that we cannot live like this without severe cognitive dissonance. Let's consider one necessary attribute of the Christian life. We know that we are commanded to love, and we know that love also involves believing the best in others before jumping to conclusions. Jumping to conclusions is evidence of prejudice residing in me. Each time I post, like, share, retweet, or in some way support negative social media campaigns and postings about a group of people, I strengthen my need to defend and commit to that position. Consequently, we tell ourselves that it's okay to hold a bias about a group of people, because, after all, it's not a bias, it's simply the truth. This is beyond confirmatory bias. This is cognitive dissonance. In the face of the command to love and believe the best in others, we distrust others and isolate ourselves from them. And I would contend that if we are behaving that way, even for the sake of self-preservation, we cannot be living the gospel of the sacrificed Savior who gave his life for troublemakers like ourselves. This has been the Wild Theology Podcast, and I'm Phil Wyman.
You're not going to include me, huh?
No, you'll just argue with me.
Clearly you're biased against me. Time you got off Facebook.
Shut up.
Somebody's got to call you out.
The silly finger-picking guitar was me. This is hastily recorded on my iPhone.
Yeah, but there was some cool ambient music by a pro.
That was Exaltation 1 by David Gerard. You can find his ambient music at ambientism.bandcamp.com.
Sorry, tortured you for the last 12 minutes.
Come on, you know that was pretty good.
Yeah, you're just the byproduct of an algorithm.